We obviously have two reasons here today. One is obviously to talk, but to add more weight that not everyone in Thoughtworks is a guy with a beard. So, thanks very much. Basically what we're going to try and describe here is a little bit of some of the terminology or the ideas behind some of these principles, and then take you through the actual journey that Last Minute went through to get there. So, I really want to start with this concept of beyond continuous. We hear a lot of stories now about companies moving towards continuous delivery or talking about lean, development, lean UX. And I think it's great that people need to think about that, but you also need to be aware that this industry is evolving. Software development is evolving, and people are going beyond that space. People are thinking about different problems beyond just how do I get my software into production. They're asking different questions around what problems do I want to try and solve. Not can I get it to production, it's like what are the things, what are the constraints that are stopping my product being ultimately successful? And it's a very different type of question to ask because they're in a different space. They're learning a huge amount about their products and their services, and the frequency is much higher. If you're putting software out once a month, there's a huge amount of effort, ideas, components in that. So when you start to understand, or if you have challenges and unpick that, there's a whole load of complexity to go through. But when you're talking about organizations that can deploy software at atomic levels, that can do small pieces of functionality and actually start to test ideas around where they think their problems are and measure the impact of that, understand if it's moving towards their goal or away from it. And if they can do that at a frequency of a number of times a week, a day, a second, you can start to see the amount of knowledge that they're building up about their product relative to people who aren't actually doing that. So just something to be cognizant of as we go through this presentation. Okay, so one of the things we just wanted to talk about, and I think we resonated a little bit with Martin and Giles earlier, about how important it is to have a strong vision, an idea of what you're trying to actually achieve. And then what are the steps involved in getting towards that vision? So one of the tools I love to use, and especially at Last Minute, was this concept of the game plan. And this is an idea or a big canvas to get out there in front of the entire organization, to start talking about what this vision is and how we're going to get there. So the first component that's most important of all visions is what is the actual objectives that we're trying to achieve. And Last Minute had a very clear vision that they wanted to drive mobile revenue. That was the primary focus of us being involved in this project. But there were other things they were interested in, and how do we drive down the cycle time for when we release software? What other things were around that? So as you start to improve your capabilities and the focus, but they wanted to engage their software development teams. They wanted to create a collaborative, vibrant environment, because then they could start to attack the top talent. Because people want to work in this way. They don't want to work in old ways. They're understanding, they're knowing what technologies, what practices are out there. So you need to be competitive even on the talent market to start working in this way. And then one of the key components was also the team. How do you pull that cross-functional collaborative team together? And this is where John brought in not only Thoughtworks, but the capacity that was available in Travelocity in Last Minute. And reaching out to product specialists like Marty Kagan, formerly a senior product manager at eBay and the writer of Switch, if you've ever read that book. But the other part that's really key to this was the 2.3 million Londoners that were right outside their door, a key market that they need to tap into and address. So that's the objectives and the people involved, but what are the sort of steps to get there? What's the strategy we need to do? So the first part is always the sort of initiation phase of any strategy, and a lot of this was about implementing a new approach, bringing new capabilities like continuous delivery, lean UX into the organization, and understanding how those things were working with a simple set of measures. How well or productive are the teams starting to be? And then starting to move towards this sort of validate stage of actually these new capabilities and approaches that we're bringing into the business are working. We've delivered something. We've delivered on a business case. We've delivered on an idea. This is the way to go. And then really this step of acceleration. So how do we start to innovate at max speed? How do we start to leverage all the capability, the skills, the approaches, that we're moving at such a pace that our competitors feel like they're stuck in lead boots? So this is really the idea of what we try to move towards, and keeping this in an area that's really visible, that everyone across the organization could understand what the strategy was, what are the steps, what are we trying to achieve, creating that shared understanding. So a few other little points I just want to touch on, and Luke spoke a little bit today about the importance of design and keeping the customer at the heart of everything. He mentioned a company such as IDEO, where they get their designers to live and breathe the life of the people that they're creating their products for. That's part of their process. And this has to be part of your process when you're building products. You need to start thinking about a 360 view of your customer. And I use the term thinking about a customer as a co-producer, a fully fledged team member of your team. Their feedback is essential to us building the right thing. So we need to start thinking about them as a co-producer of the team. And then also looking at the data that you have. So one of the biggest and probably the key competitive advantages that established organizations have over new startups starting to disrupt their space is massive amounts of data about your customers. Interesting understandings about when they purchase, why they purchase, what they purchase. But there's also financial and obviously revenue-based measures, but brand, social networks, what are they liking, what are they doing? All this needs to be started to build a holistic view of the person you're going after when you're creating these products, segmenting your market, understanding the nuances that exist in them. I think Giles and Martin spoke a little bit about looking at the two different platforms, but then when they looked at the revenue models, where does the opportunity lie? Starting to think in this manner to inform what you're doing. And then finally moving towards this concept, and the lean startup is an area that loads of people talk about, and unfortunately, I don't think sometimes the essence of what it's trying to achieve is understood. Because we hear a lot about software development and people using continuous delivery to get software into production. And in essence, what you're only doing at that point is trying to optimize a build loop. How can we build software? Dev complete means absolutely nothing. It's great for the dev team that they finish some work, but what are you actually learning from that? Until you start to put your products out there in front of customers, there's no learning. So definitions of done, and this is one thing that Eric Ries was great instrumental in sort of putting out there, was this concept of validated learning. Some organizations' definition of done is not dev complete. It's not in a test environment. It's not in production. It's the effectiveness of when we've released that software, how have people used it? Has it met the hypothesis or the idea of what we were trying to prove or disprove? And organizations in this space aren't talking about requirements. They're talking about problems that they're trying to solve. They're thinking holistically. They're using different measures on what they're trying to achieve and how they are moving towards that. They're defining the problem that they want to solve. So just what I want you to think as well about when we go through this example, just some simple measures to think about. What we used at last minute were not ideas around story points and velocity, but were helpful to understand the efficiency of the team. We talked about simple measures that were business specific, revenue related, brand related, and challenged the team to solve problems at that level. How do we increase revenue? How do we increase conversion? But keeping it simple and in a language that everyone across the business could understand. And as the problems evolved, the measures evolved, but not trying to complicate it too much. Over to John.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So I think what I wanted to cover was just give you a quick bit of background to get everyone up to speed on lastminute.com, talk about the industry that we operate in, the challenges that poses, and then really sort of hopefully convince you as to why applying a lot of these lean methodologies really was the best way for us to tackle those challenges. So I guess quick straw poll, how many of you know lastminute.com in the audience? That makes me feel very happy. How many of you have bought from lastminute.com? That's better than average e-commerce conversion, so I'm still happy as well. So, I mean, just to get everyone, on the same page, lastminute.com, an iconic brand here in the UK, I guess the original .com darling of the late 90s, and operates throughout all of Western Europe. Our mission is really quite simple. It's there to inspire and enable last-minute travel and last-minute experiences for people who need them. And to give you a great example for that, if I look at the data for last weekend, starting around about Wednesday, we saw a 30% uplift in bookings for hotel stays in Manchester. So can anyone tell me why that would be? Sir Alex Ferguson, yeah. So again, we can just enable those kind of last-minute things. Is there any Manchester City fans in the audience?
Put your hand up.
Do you want to make the joke about why Manchester United fans would need a hotel to see the home team? No. I just thought I'd let you have your moment of glory. So really, that's the key thing. And also what I've put up here is talked around, the areas that are very important for us now. We've all talked about mobile very early on in the day. And I've really just called out the tablet experiences and the smartphone experiences there. We're seeing around about today, probably about 33% of traffic now comes across those two channels to lastminute.com. Again, reinforcing that brand proposition. And we absolutely believe that by the end of the year, we will have reached that tipping point. More than half of our customers will be accessing the site either on a smartphone or through tablet devices. Even so much so that we've actually mothballed the desktop site now. What was the desktop site is now the tablet site. We're designing it for tablet and just making sure that it works on desktop going forward. So to bring you up to speed, online travel is a very complex industry. If I think about the kind of user journey from inspiration through planning, research, booking, and travel, this slide alone doesn't call out all of the players that are involved. At the inspiration level, you have startups like GoGoBot that are trying to provide you ideas. When you get into planning, we've talked about things like TripIt and those kind of tools that are already in existence. As you come down to booking, you can just see the plethora of players who are in there. You've got the online travel agents, the big players like Expedia, like Booking.com. You've got hoteliers themselves, Holiday Inn, Hilton, etc. You've got the airlines. It's an extremely competitive place. And I guess the challenge that we face is that with the exception of some products, and by that I mean, for example, like top secret hotels that Last Minute has, where we actually keep the identity of its secret and it's unique to us, we're actually selling commodity products in commodity marketplaces. And what that means is then businesses who have the ability to understand customers, learn from them, and then get that learning to market quickly will develop a competitive advantage over everyone else. It becomes much more about the experience as opposed to just the price at that point.
So just to resonate another point on this, often we hear about these products that have to have every single feature that a customer could ever dream of in order for it to be successful. Look at the companies up here. When you're purchasing a trip, how many of them do you use to make that decision? Who do you feel has competencies at certain components of that? So just to start thinking about this, less is sometimes more. If you can do the right thing really well, you'll attract business. Okay.
And again, just, again, emphasizing the pace of change. How many of these businesses that you can see here existed 5 years ago or even 2 years ago? There's players there that are mobile only. They don't have to deal with the desktop legacy that we have. It's a very rapidly moving industry. So if I think back to early 2012 when I joined the business, we know that we've got this ongoing growth of mobile. And the data in the top left here is basically data from Google, and it's talking about traffic that's either originating from a mobile device or a desktop device, from a mobile device going to either their mobile or desktop search channels. And you can see here, around about the back end of 2011, 6% of queries related to last-minute hotel searches were coming from a mobile device. Fast forward 1 year to quarter 3 2012, 33% were now originating from that channel. You can just see that channel had tripled in the space of 1 year. So again, this was something that for us at lastminute.com, who at that point were pretty high and dry with no real mobile web channel, it was something that we had to address very rapidly. But unfortunately, it got even worse than that. I think as Sam alluded to, I've worked with Thoughtworks for a number of years, and I'm pretty sold on agile techniques and continuous delivery and things like that. So I walked into the office expecting that an iconic brand like lastminute.com would have figured out some of those things already. Unfortunately, we hadn't, and we had what you can see here, this pretty traditional waterfall life cycle. And where we needed to get to was over there on the right-hand side. How could we slip towards the continuous design and continuous delivery? Really embodying those lean principles of how could we go for experimentation as opposed to elaborate planning, how could we go for customer feedback as opposed to intuition, and how could we proceed with iterative design as opposed to upfront design. So the first thing that we needed to do was really start to lay those lean foundations. I don't think we said it at the start, but the question now isn't can we build it, the question really is should we build it. But you've got to have a really efficient engine to push that, that software out to market. So the first thing that we did was create this co-located, persistent product team. Lastminute.com had very much staffed itself on a project basis prior to that. What we did here was we created one team focused on mobile. We placed them at a strategic point in the office. It was like a confluence of corridors. And obviously, you can see very visual workflow all around. What we then did as well was created a scorecard as to what we were trying to achieve here. So unfortunately for you, if you're interested, I've obscured the actual metrics. But this was for hotel bookings in last minute, looking at our European market overall, and then 4 key markets that we called out within that. And those would be metrics that we're looking around traffic, conversion, booking, average booking value, revenue, etc. And the whole idea here is that this was outcome, not deliverable driven. Again, as Barry said, we didn't care so much whether they did 4 features or 8 features in a month. What we cared about was were we hitting the targets that we'd set ourselves? Were we growing traffic at the rate that we said we would? Were we growing conversion at the rate that we said we could? And it was really making certain that the team understood those goals, and that was how we measured success. On top of that, it was then really about getting that continuous delivery pipeline. Again, when I joined, I found out that it was probably taking us somewhere between 9 to 12 weeks to get any release into live. So if you think about that, and our opportunity to learn from those releases, we really had 4 opportunities a year to learn. The great work that we did on building the continuous delivery pipeline actually meant that we were able to get the maximum time from developer check-in pushed all the way through QA, staging environments into production, down to 11 minutes and 49 seconds. So rather cheekily, I've now put that gave us 43,800 opportunities a year to learn from pushing out small incremental features and getting that feedback. Now, obviously, we didn't push that many times, but you sort of get the idea there.
So I think just one nice thing to add here, starting to use a scorecard like this also opens up the team to engage different areas of the business. So organizations, everyone across the board, they can start to understand what the team are working towards, and you can start to spark those conversations. Talk to the marketers, how do you think we could improve conversion? And start to break down these wider silos throughout the business.
So again, this was really, as I say, getting an efficient machine, a really high-performing team that we could quickly push features through and out into live. But as we know, this problem is by and large solved, and if you haven't got to this stage, I strongly advocate that you do. But really, it now moves away from that question of can we build it to should we build it? So how do we start to figure out what we should build? Well, the first thing was really to make certain that we got the whole business to understand the business that we operated in. The tool that we used was a business model canvas. I don't know if any of you used it before. There's a book by a guy called Alexander Osterwalder, is it?
Yeah, I'll give you points for that. Yeah.
Called Business Model Generation. It's a great read. I do recommend it. But essentially, the business model canvas basically lays out the key building blocks of your business in nine compartments. It starts with the value proposition in the middle. What is it? What's the customer problem, the customer need that you're trying to solve? It then looks at how you generate value on the right-hand side. So that would be like the customer relationships that you have, the channels that you access those customers through, how you segment them, and the revenue streams that you drive from it. And then over here on the left-hand side, it's really about efficiency. So what are the key activities within your business, what are the partnerships that you have, the resources that you need, and the cost structure. And the whole point for showing you this is you can imagine in an unlean type way going off and doing an extensive piece of research on this, where you'd probably send away strategy consultants for 3 months to come back with an output. In reality, we did this with a team in a couple of hours in the office, and I guarantee you that we managed to map out 90% of the business model there. You know, we got it to that stage where it was good enough to move forward, and we could build upon it as we started to move forward.
And you can start to use this tool for new ideas and new propositions that you're thinking about quite quickly, building hypotheses around new products. What customers are they for? What will we offer them? How will we reach them? Where's the revenue opportunity? But it gives you an opportunity to look at that in a holistic manner, and quite quickly you can roll this out in front of a CXO type character, and they can engage and give feedback when it's at this stage. We haven't even touched the line of code, but we're starting to formulate hypotheses for opportunities.
And again, so as Barry was saying, this was really the key canvas that we used to start to generate those hypotheses. So for example, as we thought about last minute, we started to develop hypotheses that a large amount of our customers are actually business travelers who are in London tonight looking for a hotel room. So what could we do to start to really enable that experience on the mobile web? And we started to develop, you know, ideas, hypotheses that we wanted to test based upon that. So once we'd got those hypotheses, what did we do with them? Well, the next stage was we created what was called a discovery wall within the office. And that basically took what we've labelled here, the ideas and concepts, but in essence, those hypotheses that we had developed. We would then review this on a regular basis. This would be also free for anyone within the business to come and put their ideas up on. Again, we chose a very strategic place in the office where a lot of people pass, so we could draw people into what we were trying to do. And once we'd done a review of the ideas and concepts, we'd look for data and insights that started to back those up. Could the analytics guys go, yeah, you're right, actually, when I do look at the profile of customers booking, it seems to skew towards, you know, single males in London on a Tuesday night, at which point you go, so maybe they are business travellers. Once we'd got those ideas from that we knew, hey, there's something behind this, this is worth investigating further, we'd then take it into the prototype phase. And again, you know, the key thing that I'm stressing here is this isn't about can we build, it's about should we build it. We're not using the development team at this point. We're using the UX team. So we're building out prototypes, and those might be very simple prototypes. You know, it might be as simple as an index card with some drawings on it, putting that in front of someone and asking what they think of that idea. Once again, we start to get further feedback on that. We then would invest more, developing richer prototypes that we could actually either put onto devices or, you know, mock up along those lines. And really what that then made certain was that by the time that we'd got through the end of that, we then had a set of validated ideas. These are ones that we believed that we should build. These are the ones that we believe that we should now put into the backlog, where we should actually invest in those expensive development cycles to actually to produce it. But one of the key things throughout all of this is how we involved consumers constantly and end users constantly throughout the process. So I guess for those of you who've been involved in web development for many years, you'll all have been through that process that we all did in the early 2000s, where we spent 3 to 6 months building something. We're about to put it live. Someone said, have you done any user testing? We all panicked, said we had, and picked up the phone and rang up a user testing company. We got in some random users. We sat behind one-way mirrors. We wore white laboratory coats. And we looked at what the people were saying. If they loved it, we said, well, of course we knew they loved it. If they didn't like it, we found ways how, well, actually he's Scottish, you know, of course he wouldn't like it. You know, it's a whole waste of time. You're Irish, aren't you, Barry?
Today,
yes,
yeah.
Thank God, thank God. So really what we wanted to do was make certain that we made this all, close contact with the customers. So what did we do? For the product teams, we set them the goal that for every single team, they had to bring 3 customers a week into the office to show them what features they were working on that week. If they weren't working on any new features, you couldn't get out of it. You still had to bring in 3 customers and show them the existing site, because again, you can always make it better. We have a lab set up in the office, which we've actually now kitted out like a front room, because actually, you know, a lot of people are consuming our product on an evening when they're sat on a sofa. We've got a plasma screen there. We play TV shows to try and distract them at the same time, and we're watching how they interact with it. Obviously, we use things like eyeball tracking devices. But the other thing that we did, and one of the big lean principles that we adopted, was about how we actually got out of the building and engaged with people in the wild. So again, you know, very low tech. Some of this literally costs us the price of a webcam to video it and the price of a cup of coffee afterwards, you know, to thank someone for the feedback. Some of, you know, you get great insight. You've got to be very wary of, you know, the opinion of one, as you'll see in a minute's time. But actually, once you've got feedback from 6 or 7 people, it does start to even itself out. So we've got a couple of clips that Barry will play now. This is some user testing that we did in the Department of Coffee and Social Affairs.
Yeah, and this is starting to think about, this is where we first engaged with Last Minute, and they had an existing mobile site. And what we wanted to understand were the problems that people were experiencing. Not coming up with requirements, but how could we solve problems? So we met Nigel. He was a bit of a folk legend in some respects.
Okay, so let's say I need to book a place in, for want of another city, New York. So it's a hotel, so I'm going to hotel search. Yeah, this is all quite good. I think the buttons here could be a bit, the icons and the buttons could be a bit larger. Like certainly the plus minus could do with being bolder. Dates mean nothing to me, it's all about the days. So if there was some way of having, you know, today's date right up there, I don't need to see yesterday's date. So if you could make these 2 lines disappear so they're actually lined up with the days a bit more,
so it
that
brings
would be
today to
really,
the top.
yeah, that would be really convenient. That's interesting. It's immediately preset to 2 adults. I wouldn't do that.
Right, okay.
I happen to be married, but there's a whole bunch of women out there who don't want to be reminded that they're not.
Right.
Just a thing.
Yeah.
What are you expecting to see now while it's thinking? What kind of screen would you like to see after the search?
I actually don't care, just make it really fast. So, you know, the important thing for me is I don't even know if there's availability for the day, and I don't actually know the price. I know that there's an average. So it's not a major fail, but I don't know if you guys have played around with Kayak. It's a little bit more
Had a brief look.
seamless.
Right. What was the key stuff on there for you that you were making a judgment on?
Money, distance, and where the hell's the availability button. It's
So that's basic core stuff, and you're not getting the availability. Right.
no, I'm really not.
Okay.
I mean, amenities doesn't mean anything to me.
Right.
Actually, I'm now intrigued. Okay, you know what? This is a complete waste of time. I'm not going to be bringing a pet into the United States, so I don't care that pets aren't allowed. There's a whole rabies customs thing going on there. You know, if I press call to book, do I pay international rates? I don't know, but I'm not going to be pushing that button because I don't know what it's going to do. Because I'm worried it'll immediately call up a, number in the United States, which from a mobile phone in the UK is going to be something crazy if you're on O2, like 50p a minute.
Yeah.
That's not helpful. Also, I don't really want to talk to the hotel. I don't like talking to hotels. And most of the time, this is an English-speaking country, but actually I'm not that comfortable booking hotels in French, Spanish, or German, even though I learned all of these languages at school. So
as you can see there, that cost us £2 in terms of feedback. Contrast that to £50,000 you would have spent on usability testing, many years ago. Although, as you all picked up on, be very aware of the opinion of one individual, particularly Nigel. And some of that we just didn't listen to. So really, what did we then do? How did we keep on, that's just getting out there, starting to understand. What did we do next? Obviously, saying Last Minute, we operate around a number of markets, and also within Travelocity, we have a number of brands as well, which would include Zuji in Asia Pacific and Holiday Autos worldwide. One of the things that we wanted to do very early on was actually just get out there and understand demand in the marketplace. So we did just very simple things like building mobile home pages that all these had. The only call to action was to either go to the desktop site or to call a call center to make a booking. But that at least let us understand how much mobile traffic was coming towards us, and again, what was their propensity to actually pick up the phone and call the call center. We managed to get this out within 4 weeks of the project starting. Again, it's very good around building momentum within the business, getting people engaged and being able to show that you're moving forward. And obviously, it then helps understand where should we focus, which were the sites that we're seeing most traffic coming towards, and hence we'll start to direct our efforts towards those.
So really just keeping that idea of the measurement in your head. It's objective feedback from your customers about where they're going, what they're using, how they're interacting.
Going on from that, and I've talked about it, we developed this hypothesis that a large amount of customers are business travellers looking for hotels in London. So one of the things that we thought about here was, well, maybe instead of having to fill in a form that tells us what we already know, we just give you one button that says hotels near me tonight, a location-based search, for tonight, for one person. And we pushed this out within 12 weeks. Now, the real interesting thing here that we did was at this point, we actually hadn't finished the mobile optimized checkout. And I guess one of the beautiful things about my role is I run both product and technology. So for those of you that run just one of those functions, I guess you'll be very jealous because I now only have to argue with myself about whether we should go live or not.
Which also takes a long time.
Which, you can see here, I can just imagine the conversations that I would have gone through trying to convince someone to go live without actually a proper online checkout. But the beauty of this was that actually all of this was ready. We knew that the checkout was only 4 weeks away. And what that meant was that we were going to get 4 weeks worth of learning about how users interacted with the upper funnel of the path, which would be invaluable. And I'd much rather have banked that now than sit there with nothing. And at least I could service the people who were keen enough, I could service them through the call center still.
And again, starting to learn how many people are actually going through this transaction. Analytics are on this site now. Who clicks to location services? Who goes through the screens? How many results do we need to present? Objective measures of who's actually calling the call center rather than someone sitting at their desk, striking a card, asking a question, did you come from the mobile site? Totally different type of way to collect data.
And then finally going through to releasing after 20 weeks the full end-to-end path here. And really, we talked about a lot of these things. We built a brand new platform. We had high confidence because we've been pushing it out to live, all of the time. We've been building it up around validated learning. And actually we put this live, I think it was around about the back end of November. Compared to some of the legacy mobile interactions that we'd seen, we instantly doubled conversion overnight, which was just an amazing achievement. And actually, as we fell into the Christmas period where you really do have people wandering the streets of London looking for a hotel for tonight, right now, for a variety of reasons, I should add, we hit that sweet spot. And some of the nights around there, conversion was just out of this world in terms of what we saw. And those are all things that, if we hadn't adopted this approach, we'd never have been able to pick up, all of that benefit that was sat there in that real peak period for us.
So just to start floating some more ideas, a lot of what we've spoken about here is a bit inwardly focused within Last Minute. How are people interacting with their site, with the service that we've provided? Now, what you start to get when you get to that stage is even more interesting things. So the team were working in certain areas and they started to notice dips in their conversion or actual revenue. And we were able to understand that we hadn't made any deployments. There was no performance issues that we were aware of through our monitoring services. So what was actually happening? And what we were able to start to track it down, that the competitors, people like Expedia and Booking.com, had actually dropped their prices by a fraction of amount. So people who were competing purely on price were moving away. So we were able to recognize that in some instances before people within the wider organization and start to bring those problems to them to say, we're seeing a dip in actual revenue. We're attributing it to Booking.com dropping their prices by 15%. How are we going to react to that? So starting to use measurements and analytics externally to your organization not just keeping them internally focused.
And again, the reason that came out was because we had the teams focused on the outcomes, not deliverables. You know, and the beauty is now they're wondering why the conversion is dropping, and they start to find things like that out before, whereas before, they'd only been worried about, did I deliver feature X on time? So we've got 6 minutes, probably just enough time to play the video.
Yeah.
So really, you know, this was taking a very traditional software development organization, putting in place continuous delivery, and then blending it with continuous design to create a lot of those lean startup principles. What we wanted to show you was a video of really what we then did next. So this was after the team had, I guess, started to learn how to walk. They decided that they wanted to run now and really wanted to go out and understand, you know, how do we take this one step further? How do we get out the building even more? So we started a pop-up design studio along the lines that Mark alluded to in terms of what Nordstrom did in the US. We'll play this video. It's about 6 minutes long, so we'll probably be pushed off stage straight after that.
We've seen 100% growth in our traffic in the last 12 months. Nearly half of our sales are for same-day bookings on the mobile phone. So increasingly our customers expect that last-minute booking experience to be in their pocket and on their phone. So this week we're in the Cumberland Hotel. We've moved our design team from our office. We've set up a design studio in the lobby. And this week we're talking to customers and showing them our future designs for lastminute.com and looking to get their insight and feedback so we know we're creating products and services that they really care about.
It's a site you trust.
I like to use lastminute.com for holidays, hotel bookings, because I know that I'll get my money's worth.
It's also very simple to use. It's not difficult or too technical.
I love the quirkiness of it, which is what always brings me back to it.
One of the key things is to really listen, try and understand what we could do better in the future, where we're going wrong, what we could improve upon. And it's great just to do face-to-face with customers as much as possible, really.
So what we really want to do is figure out, among all of the crazy ideas we have for an amazing app, which one will customers love? Which one will make them say, wow, want to download it, want to share it with their friends, and make a splash? So our goal is really to come up with a wow mobile app.
We're starting off today with a whole bunch of ideas, really kind of wide range. And the plan is that we take a handful of these ideas forward through the week, start actually mocking up some concepts and prototypes, start testing that with users. So hopefully by the end of the week we've got some really good customer feedback.
I would use a mobile app for lastminute.com if it was maybe picking up our locations or where you're at and maybe advising you on the local areas that you're staying in.
Definitely the price is an issue. The location is also important for me.
The iteration wall is the hub of our week. Essentially all of our ideas live on this wall and we see them evolve from basic concept through different design stages to full prototypes on the screen of a mobile phone. So we're trying this new approach so that we can have more feedback in one day than we may get in a month.
So yesterday we tested the initial concepts of the ideas, low fidelity sort of prototypes of the ideas to give people a better idea of how they work, what the journey would be, what you can click on, just to give people more of an impression of whether they would use it or not.
If you would have looked at this yesterday, it looked very different. They get some good feedback from customers, so we decided we're going to get from very high level concept into more detail and flesh out how would these look in a mobile application, how would these look from a user journey's perspective.
And once we've got the design sketched out to a good level, or we feel like we can't take it any further with just drawing it out like this, we'll put it into a full prototype, which we can then put on the phone, so we can actually show people what it would look like if you kind of scroll into it on the phone.
One of them that I particularly liked was around gamification, it was around loyalty and how really rewarding the customer for actually being entrenched with your brand.
And I find the mobile site so much easier to navigate, I think.
So this is day 4. This is our last day here at the Cumberland Hotel. And what we've managed to do over the last few days is take the original ideas that we had at the beginning of the week and bring them down to some very specific examples and some prototypes. We've got to a point where we have a way to make planning and booking a trip more collaborative. You would create the name, and then you can go along and add people to that trip. And that we'll do in many different ways, using the social tools, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And also you can add contributors. That's something that we found during the week. So we thought, okay, we shared it around and spoke to some guests and found that actually other people are involved in that decision, not just those that are travelling. You can be voting on the hotels that are really important to you and the ones that you think you'd like to stay in. And potentially, again, on feedback is maybe you've got a first choice, a second choice, third choice. So once the users decided to book a hotel, they've got together with friends and made that decision, we can start to bring in some of our other products, some that we're very famous for, which is around theatre and spa. And we can offer that within this solution as well, which would be great.
To be able to just discuss with the users over and over again what they think about the designs, what they think about the ideas within the context of a hotel has been really valuable.
Do something wild that would teach us about a better way to develop products. And from that perspective, it's been a great success.
Our goal at the beginning of the week was to go from 60 ideas to 3 or 4 really highly designed ideas that we have strong customer feedback on. The wall itself has helped as a tool to manage the massive amount of ideas we had and to understand the customer feedback and make sure that everybody understands the direction we're going in. I think the whole team would agree we would love to do this again. There's been requests from all over the business. Can other people join in next time? It's been really well received across the company and we'd love to do it again. In fact, we will be doing it again very soon, no doubt.
So we've got 2 seconds left. Hopefully you can read. Anything you want to call out, Barry?
Yeah, so really just to call back to some of the things we've all heard today. We spoke about these ideas of vision, having a clear idea around that. Using techniques like continuous delivery to shrink your cycle times down. John spoke about creating hypotheses from your data and finding ways to actually test those. And really just thinking about how you pull all this together to work through an entire organization to deliver amazing products. And that's what we've talked about. Questions?
And if I leave you with one final thought, I want to inspire you to do something lastminute.com tonight. So please, ring up the partner, say you're not coming home, book yourself a hotel, 15% off, have a great time.